culture pastor.
Where's the Mountain Dew?
We're out of Mountain Dew.
This is the pop culture pastor layer. We're never out of Mountain Dew.
I know. I'm having trouble reconciling that.
I can't. I just can't.
I'm having trouble reconciling that. I don't know where to go with this bit after that.
Yeah, that was it.
That was the bit. That was the bit. And now we're starting, and it's time for our first watch along for Loki season 2.
Dose.
Yeah.
Part due.
My name is Dave. This is Pop Culture Pastor, by the way, watch alongs. My name is Dave. Cody's here.
I am.
And we're joined by fellow geek of the round table, Matt Bogle.
Yeah.
Matt is a prime candidate to come talk about Loki with us because he has a son named Thor. So all things Thor, Matt is our resident expert. Just cuz.
Indeed.
Do you feel comfortable with that, Matt?
Yeah.
Okay, good,
Yeah.
good. You were a big fan, I'm assuming, of Loki season 1?
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
Is it your favorite Disney Plus show, or?
It's up there. Probably in the top 4.
Top 4?
Yeah. I really liked Moon Knight.
You either, like, the people that liked Moon Knight, they love Moon Knight. Like, I liked Moon Knight, but I find that the people who are going to put Moon Knight in their top 5, it's always like top 2. Like, they really loved Moon Knight. For me, Moon Knight, I thought Moon Knight was really interesting, but I don't know that it was one of my 3 favorite Disney
Moon Knight
shows.
was number 2 on mine.
Was it really? Okay.
And WandaVision's number 1. I'm a loose cannon.
Yeah. I can't complain about the WandaVision because at least back then they were telling good stories.
Right.
Like, I feel like the Disney Plus shows, and we'll get into this because I feel like this episode is very encouraging. This first episode of Loki season 2. But we'll get into that. Loki season 1 obviously was a huge deal. It's the most watched show on Disney Plus. Still to this day, it's still like the most watched show, Disney Plus original show. And it was great. People love Tom Hiddleston. And now I think we were going into this where like, oh, I don't know how this is going to be received. There doesn't seem to be a lot of hype, but we'll get into that as we go through this. Here on Watch Alongs, what we do is we kind of recap the show, recap the episode as we talk about it as the items come up, and then we got some other departments that we get to later on. All right. Yeah. Do you guys have anything you want to say in a broad sense before we start the recap?
I mean, I was worried when they partnered with McDonald's.
Why would that worry you?
It is either this is going to be a home run or this is going to be a big swing and a miss.
You can tell he's not an 80s kid. Because when I heard that, I was like, oh, sweet. Will we get those cool collector glasses they used to have back in the 80s?
I had the glasses.
Yeah.
But, I mean, about the movie actually being good or the TV series actually being good or not. Yeah. It's about 50-50 if you are going in with a fast food chain.
It seems like it's a pretty organic pairing. They're not shoehorning it into the story. But Matt, you
I like the nostalgia of the 80s style McDonald's. You know, I think they're sort of Stranger Things brought back a lot of nostalgia, and I think they're trying to grab that. And
that's probably a good point. I didn't even think about Stranger Things kind of maybe being an impetus to like, hey, let's find a way to figure out how to bring some 80s back into this, which Loki's the perfect vehicle for that in the time variance authority.
Right.
So yeah, let's get into the recap. Loki season 2, episode 1. This season begins pretty much moments after season 1 ends. Right. Sylvie has pushed Loki through the time door. She's killed He Who Remains. He's given her the ominous warning, I'll see you soon. Yep. This promise that there will be many, many more versions of him, which we have seen at the end of Quantumania and things like that. And we get right into this point where Loki is wandering around the TVA. But here's the rub. he's quote unquote time slipping.
Happens to the best of us.
Yeah. He's time slipping. Time keeps on slipping. Does anyone else think that every time they said time slipping?
Nope.
No.
I honestly didn't, but that's I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that every time. But
thank you. So that's going to be stuck in my head now. And now I'm going to hear it.
So he is time slipping, which basically we find out he is literally going through time back and forth, past, future in the TVA. He runs into various versions of Mobius. Of course, the versions in the past don't know him. The versions in the now do know him. And Loki says there's this line he delivers here at the beginning where he's trying to explain himself, and he's all panicked. And he says, "We got to the man at the end of time, and he made sense. We thought it was about freeing the timeline, but that only brings more malevolence, more violence, more war, more of him. They're coming. They're all coming."
Literally, they are coming.
Yeah. And like, this is, first of all, this is like something as the emergency vehicle goes by, which
they're coming.
Honestly, I don't think the emergency vehicles, we live in a small town, but every time we record, it sounds like we live in like,
Chicago.
Yeah. The inner city, New York. Anyways. Loki says this, and it's like, okay, so he's having this like existential moment, which I thought was kind of cool, where how scary is it when you run into someone who has a better handle on your reality that you're living in than you do, and that information they have to share with you is kind of scary. Tom Hiddleston plays this great, where the fear that Loki is trying to get across to him is awesome, and it sets up the main conceit of what this season will be and what the TVA is going to go through, which we'll kind of get into as we go along here. But there's a main confrontation or conflict within the TVA about how to move forward here. What do you guys think about that? About the beginning, about how we're eased into this season or not really eased into it at all?
Yeah.
And Loki's warning.
It's a good give and take there. The Mobius is excited that the timelines get to go on, along with what is it, B-15, I think, or and Loki comes back with, "Never mind, this is a bad idea."
Yeah,
and
B-15's great. The acting that's going on in this show is fantastic. All these characters, it was like it hasn't been off for 3 years. As soon as it starts, I'm in with these characters. I care about all these characters, which is more than I could say about Secret Invasion.
Oh, yeah.
So this go round watching Loki, I realized that B-15 is from Lovecraft Country, which means they have 2 actors from that show that only lasted one season.
Yeah.
And both are great actors, but one might have some issues that are still up in the air.
We don't see Jonathan Majors in this episode, but we do hear his voice.
So as someone that's a fan of Doctor Who, I love time travel. Going back and forth. And when you mess with time, it does weird things. So I was all about the time slipping, but at times I think it took away from Tom Hiddleston's urgency, that he just wasn't there long enough to get anything out.
Yeah.
And so then you could easily forget about it because we have a whole nother thing to deal with, which is Loki's time slipping back and forth, and we got to fix that sometime.
Yeah. Well, okay. So the time slipping is clearly a function that is for this first episode. It's the mission of this episode to get Loki so he's not time slipping anymore. Although there is some important information that's learned throughout the time slipping, which we'll get to. But yeah, if this was a movie, is this whole part of the movie cut? Is the time slipping even a thing? And if it's just a movie, or you know what I'm saying? This is the ongoing problem with Disney Plus stuff. Is there extra stuff in here just to fill out episodes?
According to some guy on Facebook and Twitter, no. Writers don't do that, Dave.
No, I absolutely think they do. I think, but that was the essence of this episode. Like you said, it was that I have important information. Blah, I'm gone.
Yeah. So they ran into this problem with Secret Invasion where in this episode, you have to have an action point. And the only action point is to stop the time slipping, where Mobius goes out onto the spacewalk and, with the time loom and in the crazy astronaut outfit that has a crack in the shield.
Duct tape fixes all.
Anyways, we'll get to all that. Let's move on. We meet Ouroboros, who's named for the snake that eats its tail, which is kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Or OB, as apparently Mobius has called him at some point in the past, although Mobius has no recollection of meeting OB, which tells you that their minds have been wiped, that's true. That
they got men in black.
Yeah, we knew this. We find that out in season 1. And so it's been beyond an amount of time where his mind has been wiped. But apparently OB's mind does not get wiped. But also he hasn't talked to anyone in 400 years.
Yeah, he's just hanging out in the basement.
So I think He Who Remains just forgot he was down there.
Yeah.
Right? When he was doing the mind wiping. So OB, or Ouroboros, played by Ke Huy Quan, who continues to be just one of my favorite people in the whole entire world. Yeah. He is so good in this episode. And I just want more of those three in a scene together. I want more Tom Hiddleston, more Ke Huy Quan, and more Owen Wilson together, because that was fantastic. The scene where Loki's talking to the past OB and Mobius is talking to the present OB. That was, and the whole realization where he's like, memories are forming immediately, where Loki's talking to in the past. He's like, oh, wait. It delivered perfectly. Ke Huy Quan, I just never thought I would say Oscar-winning Ke Huy Quan and like it not be funny. Like he's really amazing.
How has he been missing from Hollywood for so long?
I don't know. He's great.
He is an amazing actor.
Yeah. Cody, do you have something to say about Ke Huy Quan? Looked like you were about to say something.
I mean, he delivers his lines perfectly for this role.
Yeah.
And he's been in Hollywood this whole time. He's just not been in front of the camera.
Right.
Yeah.
He's been
stunning. Yeah. But he's like Tom Brady in his prime, man. He's just not missing. Through one episode. He just doesn't miss. But he's playing OB. He's the TVA's tech expert. He's kind of like their Q. If I'm going to make a James Bond reference, he wrote the TVA guidebook apparently, which I'd love to read that. That'd be something. There'd probably be a lot of Easter eggs in there.
Christmas gift.
Loki and Mobius have conversations with OB at different spots in time. OB comes up with a solution. He's going to create a temporal aura extractor, which I'm not really sure what it does. There was some sci-fi stuff in there in all of this.
It was very timey-wimey. Hard to explain.
But it is hilarious when Owen Wilson constantly pronounces it as temporal, like tempura shrimp.
Yeah.
Yes.
The temporal loom apparently is being overburdened with too many threads of time, which, look, the existence of the temporal loom indicates that, yes, everything the TVA was being fed was a lie. Mm-hmm. This whole pruning, this whole sacred timeline, pruning of other timelines, they're literally taking timelines and threading them together into a loom. Okay. And now the problem is that since they're not pruning anymore, it's overloading the temporal, the temporal loom. Yeah. I'm getting the temporals confused.
Thank you, Owen.
But it's being overburdened. And Loki, who apparently needs to be ripped out of time, as explained by OB, and Mobius is going to use this extractor. And like I said, you can't, if someone could follow the science of all that, I don't know. But it's supposed to be kind of sci-fi-y, which makes it fun and mysterious.
Yeah.
Loki catches 1.21 gigawatts at the wrong time and slips to the future, right at the worst possible time. And we get this really interesting scene where he's supposed to be pruning himself. Right. But when he goes to the future, he can't find anybody, which is interesting. Nobody's in the TVA. The phone starts ringing, which is creepy. I'm like, what's happening here? And then the elevator opens and it's Sylvie. And she says, there you are. Just before he's pruned by someone we don't see behind him. And this was like, okay, like they're doing some kind of cool stuff with the time slipping, whatever, because I assume this is going to be a scene we see from the other end from a different perspective later on in the season.
Right. Hope so.
Well, wouldn't make much sense if it didn't, I guess. But who do you think pruned him? Was it himself?
Himself.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I'm going with.
I'm going with a variant. I think it's a variant of He Who Remains.
Oh. Not He Who Remains, though.
But not He Who Remains.
Yeah. Not He Who Remains from
some version of...
But not, you can't just say Kang, because there's a bunch of different Kangs. He Who Remains is, we're referring specifically to the one who allegedly won the multiversal war, set up the sacred timeline, set up the TVA to prune all the other timelines.
Right.
But like, could it just be him from another time?
Yeah.
Maybe not necessarily a variant.
Could have been him years earlier, knowing I need to save the timeline and this is the way to do it.
I don't hate that guess.
Yeah, that is a good guess.
That'd be interesting.
I see what you're saying now.
Before we move on, the whole scene with Owen Wilson and the astronaut outfit, that scene's great and it creates this action, but like that's kind of my issue with
hoofing it.
Yeah, but my issue with it is that's the main dramatic point of the first episode, and that's my least interest. I think it's the least interesting part. It's almost like we need an action piece in this first episode. But it was like, look, here's the thing: if that's the worst part of the episode of all the season, they're going to be just fine because it was entertaining, super entertaining.
They could have showed me the walls for like 15 minutes, and I would have been good.
Oh man.
Oh, all the stuff on the walls?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. There's so many Easter eggs going on in the background, and highly recommend you going out and like watching some YouTube for this. New rock stars are really good at digging into the Easter eggs. They'll like even the small stuff in the background. They'll freeze frame it, blow it up, and try to explain it. So
they have more time than we do.
And the Loki showrunners, man, do they get into the Easter eggs. There's lots of them. Now, so there's those two sections of the episode. Then the other big section of the episode is the stuff that happens in the war room. The stuff dealing with, okay, what does the TVA do now? So the TVA is in an internal struggle to prune or not to prune. It's very interesting the way they're going to tell this story because you've got like the hawks, the war hawks, the conservatives, if you will. And then you've got like the bleeding heart liberal people like B-15 as she lays out what she learned in season 1, which is they've been murdering innocent people. They've been pruning these timelines and there's people living there. And she's like, there's people whose lives were ending in this. And in this thing, you guys, and I don't know if it's just because the things that were going on this weekend, but there's this really interesting real-time parallel that's going on. Because the question they're asking is when there are elements in your world or your environment that are existential dangers to someone else, what are the innocent lives among them worth to you? So think about Israel. Think about what happened in Israel this weekend and Gaza. And like, okay, so there was an incursion made by militants, extremists, but the place they're excursing from, Gaza, is a densely populated area with many, many people. And when you're talking about like the culprits, you're talking about this small group of people. And now Israel is probably going to respond to that by like some people online just say level it. And you're just like, okay, but what about all the people that have nothing to do with this?
Right.
And it's the same question the TVA is asking. Like it's a real parallel to the real world going on right here. It's like, hey, Loki says, he who remains sounds logical. So the problem the TVA has is he who remains could be right. If you don't prune, you're going to get very dangerous individuals in your area very quickly. But the only option is to prune the timeline and take out a bunch of innocent people with them. Here's the conundrum. What do you do? And I dig that they're going to ask this question on this show. And, they didn't plan this.
No,
but
they couldn't have.
This is a real world struggle. Like, I'm sure the writers knew that this, hey, this has parallels to our world for sure, to the real world. What do you guys think about that? That's this being the internal struggle of the TVA, this kind of ongoing story that's going to be happening. Because, look, it's going to be about Loki and Sylvie, the search for Sylvie, the trying to put the band back together. That story is going to happen. But the other ongoing story is this kind of human conundrum that the TVA is facing.
Like you said, it definitely has parallels within the real world. And one of the biggest movies this year was Oppenheimer. And literally, if they don't create the atom bomb, someone else does, and it gets dropped somewhere else.
Yeah, same problem, the same conundrum.
That if the TVA doesn't prune the timelines, massive amounts of death and chaos and pain are going to ensue. But if they prune them, massive amounts of death and chaos will happen, but you don't know about it.
From henceforward, we will just refer to Loki season 2 as Marvel's Oppenheimer. Cody's right. The parallels are there. So in this war room, they're having this discussion. There's obvious beef. There's obvious factions being formed. Meanwhile, as Loki is slipping through time, he's in the future in this very war room, and he hears a very interesting recorded conversation with Ravonna Renslayer. We remember her. She was a judge who she knows more than she was letting on, but it's a conversation between her and He Who Remains, which is super interesting.
But where in the timeline? Right?
Well, that's a good question. It's clear that, so was he in the future or the past? I think he was in the future, right?
Or was he outside of time?
No. I think we can do away with that. I have a theory about that we're going to get. There's a whole new series we're doing on these watch-alongs called Dave's Crackpot Theories. And I'm going to address this specifically. But clearly, he's at some point in time, because the whole thing that's proven through the thing, the taxi cab or the thing crashing through the window and the thing damaging the floor, the monitor damaging the floor, is when Loki figures it out, is when the viewer figures it out. Wait a minute. Time is passing in the TVA. Which we've been told is not a thing.
Well, you're not supposed to be able to slip in the TVA either.
Obi says that too.
So I'm not sure whether he's in the past, whether he's in the future. It's super interesting that there's a recorded conversation between Ravonna Renslayer and He Who Remains that somebody was clearly listening to in the war room. Gentlemen, there's no fighting in the war. Anyways, that's a Dr. Strangelove reference, if anyone cares.
Thank you.
Anyways, he says to her, I've got the dialogue. I've got what they said right here because it was hard to hear.
Okay.
Ravonna Renslayer, you are quite a marvel, which, okay, that's not an accident.
Is she Miss Marvel?
No. He Who Remains says, Ravonna Renslayer, you are quite a marvel. I will be proud to lead with you. You made a difference in this war. Thank you for being on my team. Okay.
And remember the end of the last episode in season 1, she gets something. Mm-hmm. She goes
through the time door.
Right. And we don't
and
know
that's the last time we see her.
Right.
And she's clearly, we suspected that she's in with Kang or He Who Remains somehow.
Right.
But we didn't know the extent, and that Miss Minutes is definitely in league with He Who Remains.
What?
There were no jump scares this episode, though. Hey, y'all! Get out of here, Miss Minutes. We don't see Miss Minutes in this episode, do we? Other than Easter egg type things, I think you see her on a couple bumper stickers or something on those flying cars. But by the end of this episode, we're left with the TVA kind of sorting this out. They're all on the hunt to go look for Sylvie. Then in the end credit scene, we see Sylvie in 1982, Oklahoma. Was that what the year was, or 83?
I don't know.
It doesn't matter. I don't think there's much difference between 82, 83, 84,
I did have
Oklahoma.
beef with this scene, though.
You did?
That accent didn't sound Oklahoman.
The guy in the McDonald's?
That sounded like he's straight out of Georgia.
Well, maybe
even in like
rodeo,
roughneck Oklahoma, there is a distinct accent, and that was not it.
Well, let it be known that Cody is in full protest.
I am.
Over the actor used in the McDonald's scene in Oklahoma because he didn't sound Oklahoman.
Thank you.
When I was in the military and lived in New Jersey, anyone from New Jersey, New York would go, "Where are you from, Arkansas?" No, I'm from Kansas. So
Kansans do have an interesting accent, though. Kansas, but I find that you only know that Kansas accent if you're from Kansas.
Right.
Most people wouldn't recognize. They think you were from someone else. But if you've ever heard the phrase, "Hey, don't forget to jiggle the handle on the toilet," then you're from Kansas. That person has to be from Kansas. It's just, or, "Hey, last night, did you hear the woof?" The woof, that's a Kansas accent as well. It's a wolf, but anyways.
It's certain parts of Kansas.
I love, Cody, that you focused in on the accent.
I did. I'm like, hey, Oklahoma, this is right next door to us. And then you lost me.
Well, the Sylvie scene at the end is interesting for a lot of reasons because we don't know whether she picked that spot, whether that's just the spot she ended up with the time chaos that was going on. But it's a really kind of beautiful scene in that if we remember Sylvie's backstory, it's that she's been on the run since she was a child from the TVA and out of her own time. And so she really hasn't been able to live a life. And so she's in this 1980s McDonald's and she turns around as the guy is kind of talking to her. And she sees like a young couple. They make sure you notice that she's looking at a young couple. She's clearly emotionally affected by that. And the guy, right at the time, the guy says, "Well, what would you like?" He suggests the chicken nugs, right?
And he was right. That's the only thing you eat there.
Fries.
Well, I mean, the nuggets and fries.
Hold on, yeah.
Nuggets and fries.
Let us, if you're in the 80s, if you somehow find yourself back in time at a McDonald's,
get all the fries.
Get the French fries. You won't be sorry.
See if the ice cream machine's working back then.
They just hit different back then. The fries just hit different, I promise you.
Yeah. Well, all the trans fat.
And get yourself a Big Mac. It'll come in a styrofoam container. Don't question it. Just go with it. And somehow it tastes better. I don't know why. I don't know the logic of that. It just does.
I agree. 1982, Broxton, Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Broxton. Yes. Yeah. 1982.
Well, so.
And she says, let me just finish the scene. She says, "I want to try everything." And I found that almost made me a little misty. I was like, oh, look at her.
That did not.
We know you're emotionless, Cody.
First thought I had was, is she going to recreate Super Size Me? Just eating all the McDonald's menu. Then my second thought was, are they going to try to ring her up for all this? How's she paying for it?
It is the first time a cute girl in a McDonald's has ever had the exact same thought I would have had. Yeah, I'll take one of everything. That sounds great. And that's how the episode ends. Half the TVA's out hunting for her. The other half is going to be hunting for her, you assume. The good guys and the bad guys of the TVA. Although, as we laid out, this internal struggle they have that parallels real world stuff isn't so easy to say who's right and who's wrong.
I already said He Who Remains was right, and I'll stick with it.
Okay. All right. Cody is going out on that ledge and saying He Who Remains did the right thing, and Loki and Mobius are going to mess everything up.
All so Mobius can have a jet ski.
All right. Yeah. What's good? What do you guys have as what's good in this first episode?
Ke Huy Quan.
Oh, are we just unanimous there?
Yes.
Ke Huy Quan is fantastically amazing. And he's just great. I can't believe they got him. Like, he just won an Academy Award, and now we're putting him in a Marvel show, and I'm just like, how did we get so lucky? And then to put him as this character, and we just don't deserve Ke Huy Quan. But I'm here for him. I am his biggest fan, and like when he wins his next Oscar, I can't wait for him to say Goonies Never Say Die Again.
Yes. Yeah.
Just fantastic. What else?
I mean, Easter eggs are always nice.
Yeah. Just like I said, Loki, the showrunners for Loki, man, they do love their Easter eggs. And like I said, search out like New Rock Stars on YouTube. They'll tell you or Nerdist. They'll tell you every Easter egg that goes on in there.
There was a lot.
Oh, there's tons of them.
I still haven't gone through it all. I didn't have time to.
What about you, Matt? What was good for you in this episode?
Like you just talked about it. Her going back to 1982.
The nostalgia is going to be fun,
Yes.
right? For those of us that were alive.
Because we're around the same age.
Now,
and
Cody,
I've had emotion with that.
Cody claims to be an 80s baby.
I was.
By how many months, though?
A solid 8 months. Older than Taylor Swift, but an 89er nonetheless. I knew Ronald's gang. I had the collector's cups, and Happy Meal still had legit toys.
Dude, how do we bring back that? How did they not bring back collector glasses for this tie-in? Right. What a no-brainer.
Because the lead paint.
Was there lead paint on them?
Some of them, if you got the ones with that actually had paint around them.
Well, that was most of them.
Now, like I had a Flintstones one that was just glass, and then it had like the Flintstones carved into it.
No, those ones sucked. You had to have the painted one.
Well,
Those
we had
cool.
the painted ones, and they had lead paint, so that's why we don't have nice things.
That's why Gen Xers are so cool, I guess. We all got toxic lead poisoning when we were, and we liked it. We loved it.
Look, we're as normal as could be. Ish.
But yeah, the nostalgia factor is going to be kind of fun. I mean, I imagine they won't be here long. Like, what are we thinking? A couple episodes tops?
Yeah.
Before the story moves on?
I think
Maybe.
one more.
Yeah. I mean, if we don't see them eating some old school McDonald's food, though,
Yeah.
it's all for naught. I want to see, like, I'm trying to think of what they even had back then that they don't have now. But they didn't have the McDLT wasn't a thing yet.
No.
I don't think. That's where they kept the hot side hot and the cool side cool, and it came in the double
And you pull them
styrofoam
together.
container. It was
To
twice the
kill
styrofoam, baby.
The earth just twice as fast.
As Dennis Leary said, they were made out of baby seal eyes. But yeah, I'm loving the nostalgia, and I'm excited about where it's going to go. I mean, we did see a trailer where she's got a nice 80s haircut too. So she's clearly living in the 80s for some time by the time they get to her. The other thing I thought was really good is, and it's evident immediately, even if we diagnose that the scene with Mobius and the astronaut in the temporal loom, not the thermal loom, isn't like vital to the story, the storytelling is just so much better in this. And I hate to do this, but I'm going to compare it to Secret Invasion. Because the thing that this show has in common with Secret Invasion is amazing casts. The Secret Invasion cast was just as accomplished and amazing as this cast. But Secret Invasion's incredibly boring.
Right. The writers were horrible.
And it's like there's a difference in this storytelling versus Secret Invasion. And someone smarter than me is going to have to figure that out and say, like, well, what is it about this? Is it because the story matters? The stakes are higher? I mean, I don't know. But it's just so much better. I mean, immediately.
I'm waiting till we get to the bad to comment.
Get to the bad what?
To the bad for this.
Okay. Well, let's just go. I'll let you lead that off. What's not so good about this episode, Cody?
Okay, so really, like you have stated inadvertently a couple times, not a lot really happens this episode.
No, it's an intro. It's a first episode in a lot of ways.
Kind of slow moving in parts, and the bad is it's going to be Marvel fans. Marvel fans will be the bad because they complained about, WandaVision didn't spoon feed us enough before Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. It was very logical to me, like, she got here. That makes sense where we left her. But some people were like, no, you didn't explain it good enough. If this series ends up
by
being,
some people, he's saying me.
I am. And I'm also saying, like, some people are like, well, this series was clearly meaningless if it doesn't really tie into the big picture. And this has to tie into the big picture because we have Kang and like the big stories coming up. But like, if this doesn't do a good enough job spoon feeding people, or if it just seems like a waste of time, You're going to hear about it. And what's happening, I think, is really good storytelling. But I also am the guy that has liked most of these Marvel projects, with the exception of a few. And that also being Secret Invasion, because that was trash.
Yeah. Well, can I rebut that just a little bit?
You can try.
Yeah. I agree. I agree with what you're trying to say, but even that second part, I'm like, no, it has to tie in to where the story goes after this. I think if it does what Multiverse of Madness did and just kind of drops it, like, which may not have been the Multiverse of Madness filmmakers' fault. It's after, like, where we don't. The ramifications. I mean, what about Eternals too? Like, there's just a giant celestial statue
still
in the Indian Ocean, and nobody said anything about it.
I've only said it 10 podcasts now.
Like, I don't need spoon-fed, story ties together, but I need something.
Right.
Give me something. And if this story doesn't advance the story in some way, but I think it will, because I have faith in the Loki showrunners, because the first season kicked the whole thing off, and they did it wonderfully. And so the first part, what was your first point?
I had so many, it's hard to keep track.
I don't remember what it was now, but I was going to rebut the nerd out of it.
You're welcome.
Do you have anything that was not so good, Matt?
You sort of took it all there.
Yeah. It was overarching that
it drug on.
You're going to hear people say that it was slow building.
Well,
that there wasn't a lot happening in it.
Here's the problem with Marvel, and this is this leads into my what's not so good. The numbers, it's got an 83% on Rotten Tomatoes so far, which is fine. It's good. That's good. But there's no hype. So the night this dropped, Loki was not in the top 30 trending on Twitter, which is unheard of. Like, when the first season of Loki was on, it was always high trending. Like, people were talking about it. And I think what's bad, as you mentioned, Marvel fans, I think there's just less of them. So Star Wars and Marvel's not like Star Wars. Star Wars had this built up fandom over decades, right, where they have a lot more leeway. Even though the Star Wars fandom, I think most people would say those fans are a lot unhappier overall with where Star Wars is compared to Marvel. I think Marvel didn't have as much collateral, didn't have as much credit. And I think Marvel's really damaged their brand, because there's not much hype around Loki. And that first episode was great. That was good TV. That was worth Disney Plus for me.
So it does bring up the question, though, if you're going to compare Star Wars and Marvel, there's a lot fewer projects within Star Wars. And so people had to build up time and wait patiently for episode 7 or episode 5 to come out, and then episode 6 if we're going to do the weird math in Star Wars. But literally there's a decade or two in between the original Star Wars movie and the third one, and then you have the prequels that come out, and everyone's I'm going to camp out for it because I've been waiting 20 years for George Lucas to put this out.
Yeah. Well, I think they're both on the right track, though, Star Wars and Marvel, judging by their most recent show. I think the common theme between Ahsoka and this first episode of Loki, if we can guess how this is going to go,
I still need to watch Ahsoka,
is what you're saying, what you said about Marvel fans, but the storytelling's good. The storytelling's good. Ahsoka, the storytelling was good. That doesn't mean it was technically perfect. Loki will probably not be technically perfect, but if the story's good, I think most people are willing to look past things like that. And so I think what's not so good is you might have some brand damage when it comes to Marvel. And I think it's surprising how much brand damage Secret Invasion might have done.
Right.
It's specifically with the Disney Plus stuff. I still think the brand damage might not be so apparent in movies. Like, if the next movie's good, probably not. But
Marvels.
It could be, I suppose, if we're having hope. We'll see.
Do you think some of they didn't hype it? Do you think that had to do anything with the Jonathan Majors stuff?
Well, that makes it more difficult too, because the hypeable thing besides Tom Hiddleston would be Jonathan Majors, because that's what people were most excited about before all his issues started coming up.
/ that was one of my bad things of the episode, is there is no Jonathan Majors, even though right now we're still kind of up in the air on how we should view Jonathan Majors. Like, his acting ability is above approach.
Yeah.
That, like, it's good. It's quality. Now, if they're like, we should ease him into a couple, like, wait a couple episodes before you actually see him, and okay, that's a thing, but you could have also replaced him.
It looks like he's going to be a big part of the show, though.
Right.
Judging by the trailers.
But my worry is when this was filmed, was this fresh with everything? And did they have to change? That's what I worry, that they had a script, and now we were going to see some script changes.
Yeah. Okay. So Marvel does this. Marvel changes a lot on the fly, and that's been a complaint of Phase 4 and Phase 5 is these movies come out kind of muddled. Think Quantumania. Because there's so many changes they're making to the script, and they're rewriting the script, and they're rewriting it again and rewriting it again. And then what you finish with is this kind of muddled mess. And then so first episode was good. That's great. But let's see what happens. Did they try to write Jonathan Majors out, for instance? I think that's the concern. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Curse you, cancel culture.
Well,
no,
if he did what he did, then
no, I know.
it's worthy.
Yes, no, I'm
all I know is he might have staged a high school fight to break it up.
Oh, dude, we can't go there. I could talk about that for an hour. That was definitely staged, bro.
Which, like, if you haven't seen I Think You Should Leave, there's a skit that they do where Fred Armisen hires this company that has these guys, like, jump this actress that looks like she's homeless, and then he goes in there and breaks it up, tries to make his kids think he's tough.
I thought it would look real.
Yes. It was perfect. And then this happened in real life, and I'm like, did they watch the show?
Oh, man. Rough. Okay, it's time for Dave's Crackpot Theory of the Week, a new feature on watch-alongs. My Crackpot Theory of the Week. You guys ready?
I'm anxious.
1, whereas time clearly passes at the TVA. 2, whereas this is directly in contradiction with the inference in season 1 that the TVA is, quote, outside of time. 3, whereas the multiple timelines may not be synchronized in time, i.e. they're not parallel. So the different times in our past may be lined up differently with alternate timelines, right? So the TVA in particular, who knows where all this is at? Who knows where this is taking place as far as it compares to Earth 616? Here's my theory. My theory is that the grand multiversal war that the TVA is built on hasn't happened yet. In the as far as it's related to the 616. Thoughts that we're building towards it, that we're not, that it hasn't happened yet.
I agree with you, because remember in the last episode of season 1, he says the scientist himself, and he says the century he was in, and I don't remember
he's
exactly.
from like the 31st century,
right?
Yeah.
So right there tells you,
but he's hopping through time, right?
Right.
He's finding alternate versions of himself. And there's no idea of how long that takes in real time, because then you get into this prospect of real time happening while jumping around timelines.
Yeah.
So I don't know how that works or how he ages. But like, okay, what I know is the TVA is clearly in time. That's proven this episode.
Right.
Time's passing there. How does that work? Like and we hear the recording. Was that in the future or the past? Don't know.
We don't.
I don't know. I think the grand multiversal war that the TVA is built on hasn't happened yet.
I want to diagram.
So if your theory's correct, Disney's stealing from one of their new properties.
Which is?
Doctor Who.
Oh.
They are.
Is this a Doctor Who thing? Did I stumble upon a Doctor Who?
There is a time war in Doctor Who.
And it's in the future? That's the big. Is that the big?
That's not a big surprise. I don't know if it's actually in the future or not, because time works funky.
Yeah, it's timey-wimey for sure.
Yes.
If you're gonna rebut my crackpot theory, you're gonna have to do some work. So whoever's listening to this, if you're gonna rebut my theory, you're gonna have to really put some knowledge into this.
I'm going to say where He Who Remains was. when he got killed was outside of time.
I would buy that. But we thought that the TVA was outside of time too, but I don't think that's true.
I don't think it was outside of time because remember he felt the and he said, "Well, now I'm past."
But according to him, he's at the end of time.
Yes,
right.
So
end of the time he knows, and he allowed himself to go beyond that to go. I don't know what's going to happen.
I don't know what's happening, but I'm sticking with my theory.
We'll see.
You just blew my mind. Doctor Who is owned by Disney now?
I don't think it's owned, but they'll be showing it on Disney Plus. They are going to start streaming all the episodes.
Matt, how many Infinity Gems out of 10 are you giving this episode?
7.
7 out of 10?
Yeah.
Okay.
I need Michio Kaku or Neil deGrasse Tyson for some of the time stuff, but I'll go 7.5.
Okay. I'm giving it a solid 8.5. I thought it was really good. And maybe it's just because Disney Plus shows haven't been, I feel like they haven't been great in a while. But I'm riding high off the Ahsoka, which I kind of enjoyed. So I might be bloating that rating a little bit, but I'm going to go 8.5.
I think you are.
I'm going to go 8.5 out of 10.
Well, to be honest, I gave it a 7 because I'm worried what Disney Plus does to shows and where's this going.
As someone that has enjoyed most of the Disney Plus Marvel shows, with the exception of a few, I feel that I'm very grounded in my 7.5.
Okay.
It was just an average episode.
Hey, look, we're a good cross section of where the fandom's at. We're cautious. We're excited. We're everything in between.
We're DC fans.
Yeah. What did you guys think of the first episode of Loki season 2? Make sure you subscribe to the pod so you can listen to all the watch alongs as you go along in this season of Loki. We're going to be doing every episode. We'll be doing a watch along. So stick with us and, subscribe. Make sure you download them, man. Download the episodes as they come out. So they're already on your phone. You don't have to stream it or anything. And what'd you guys think of the episode? Tell us on the social media posts for this episode.
Be ready for some Flashpoint comparisons in the future.
Oh gosh. Oh my goodness. Well, is this for real, or is Disney going to be able to sustain it, or is it going to go a dark turn? Find out next week on the next watch alongs. Same Pop Culture Pastor time, same Pop Culture Pastor channel. Good night now.